Question 1. Citizenship is a relationship in which a nation legally recognizes that an individual has met the legal requirements to obtain certain rights and privileges from residing in the nation. And there's 3 definitions on the screen: immigrant, emigrant, and refugee. And it goes on to say, Sharman recently moved to the United States and was recently granted citizenship there. Sharman moved to the US because her and her husband both found new jobs, and not as the result of war or natural disaster. Sharman and her husband both moved from Bangladesh to the US, where they plan to live permanently. And the question asks, based on the information above, which of the following is correct? So I'd like you to read those definitions and read the rest of the information, and then pause the video, try to answer this question, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the answer here is B. And if you picked A, just note that the passage tells us that she moved to the United States, not away from it. So A would not be correct. Now C, if you picked C, just note that we have to go based on the information in the passage, and it doesn't appear that she left her country due to violence or disaster or anything like that. So based off of the information above, we couldn't say that she's a refugee. Now what about D? Well, it says in the passage that she was granted citizenship. So if she came to the US, say for a specific short period of time, she could be a non-resident alien. But it specifically says she's a citizen and that she's planning to live here. So we would be left with answer B, which is the correct answer. Okay, so question 2, the information is all the same, except now we're being asked, based on the information above, which of the following is correct, and we're asked about her husband this time. You have A, B, C, and D. So I'd like you to pause the video and take your time, use the information in the passage to answer the question, and then we'll go over it. So the correct answer here is B. Now, A is wrong because an immigrant is someone who leaves their country, and he's coming to the US, so he's not emigrating to the US, right? What about C? Well, he emigrated from Bangladesh to the US. He didn't immigrate to Bangladesh, so that's why C would be wrong. And what about D? Well, again, just like with Sharman, if we go based just off of the passage, there's no evidence here that he's a refugee. And in fact, it does tell us that he didn't leave because of violence or natural disaster or anything like that. So that seems like evidence that he wasn't a refugee because he's moving for work, right? Okay, let's move ahead. Question 3. And it says the following text is an excerpt from the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And the question asks, based on the quote above, which of the following is not supported by the First Amendment? And I've given you A, B, C, and D, so I'd like you to pause the video, try this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so let's go through this here. So for this question, the first thing I want you to notice is that it's asking which of the following is not supported. Sometimes on the stress of a test, when the time's ticking down, people will kind of miss keywords like not, and so they'll try to answer which of the following is supported, which would be incorrect. So just a reminder to always carefully read questions before you jump in. And A, what about A? Well, what I want you to see here with A is that we can kind of look for keywords like the word peace that show up in the answer and kind of find that in the passage here. And so we can find the part of the excerpt here that uses the word peace. We can confirm that A is the correct answer. Or not that A is the correct answer, that A is correct, I should say. So if it's correct, all right, that means that it's not going to be the right answer here because it's asking for which is not supported. So same with B here. We can read it. It says sending a list of complaints to the U.S. government, and we can look back up in the passage. We see that word government there. That tells us which part of the passage we need to read probably to get this right. And so we would say, well, B, this is true. This is something that is correct. It is supported, so we would check B off because B can't be the right answer because we want to know which of the following is not supported. Okay, so that brings us to D, right? Let's skip C for a second. And in D, the word newspaper doesn't show up, but the word press or freedom of the press, okay, press can often mean the media, could be the newspaper. And so if you knew that, you would know that freedom of the press means that you can start a newspaper. And so D is supported. And this is going to leave us here with C. And so you could use process of elimination to rule A, B, and D out and come up with C, or you could just read and see that C doesn't mention anything about unreasonable search of your home. That's actually something that would be in a different amendment. Okay, question 4. Now it says the chart below shows the results of the 2018 United States House of Representatives elections in Pennsylvania. And so you see a chart on the screen here. And let me read this in case the text is small because I want to make sure you can see this. So it says party, then it says Democratic and Republican. And for the last election, it says the Democratic, it has 5 seats, then Republican was 13. It then says seats before, and then Democratic, it says 6 and 12 for Republican. Seats 1, it says 9 for Democratic, 9 for Republican. And for percentage, it says 55.03% Democratic and 44.75% Republican, just in case you can't see the data clearly on your screen. So I'd like you to pause the video, review A, B, C, and D, and try to get the right answer. And as always, we'll go over it. Okay, so the correct answer here is B. And A is wrong because the Democratic Party had 6 seats before, and then it looks like they won 9. C is wrong because we can see the Democratic candidates received about 55% of the vote, which is higher than the nearly 45% the Republicans had. Now what about D? Well, we can see that the Republicans had 12 seats before, and it says 9 seats won, which means they lost 3 in the election, right? Because they had 12 and won 9, which means 3 fewer. And so we take that out, which would leave us with B. B is the right answer. Okay, moving ahead. So the next question. And so again, I'm going to read the information here for this question because I want to make sure you can see all this because it's hard to fit all these graphs on the screen. So it says at the top, population size in Florida from 2010 through 2015, as reported by populationu.com. And so we see on the vertical axis, right, here we see population, and down here on the x-axis we see the years from 2010 through 2015. And the question says the trend shown in the graph above continued in 2016. Based on the trend, which of the following is the best estimate for Florida's population in 2016? So I don't expect that you'll take this all in just from hearing me read it, but I just want you to pause the video now, take all the time you need, try to figure this out, and then as always, we'll go over it. Okay. Hopefully you had a chance to try that out. And the first thing that we want to do here for this question is we want to look at that blue line on the screen. And we want to ask, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Is it going up then down or down then up? What's it doing? And here is pretty clear. Looks like it's getting bigger. It's going up. It's increasing. So we want to look at the numbers here on the vertical axis. And we see that they're going up each year, right? From 5 million to 10 million, it's going up each year. So that tells us that we know that the trend is showing an increase each year. If the trend is showing an increase each year, and it says that the trend continued in 2016, we could rule B out because we know that B is way too low. B is not even at 5 million, let alone something above 20 million, okay? So what about C? Well, it's true that this 80 million some number, it is higher. So since the trend is showing increase, C would be an increase, but it says here, it says which of the following is the best estimate. So C would not be the best estimate because that number 80 million something is so high that it's extremely unlikely the population would shoot up that much in 1 year, right? Now D, I could see why you would pick D, but because that's 20 million, right? And we see 20 million on the graph, but the thing I want you to note is that if you look at the year 2014 and you trace up here, you would see that in about, looks like 2014, the population had reached and exceeded 20 million. And here going towards 2015, we're going up above 20 million, right? And so we're already past 20 million by 2015. The trend continues in 2016. We would need to see more than 20 million. So that's why we would take D out. So hopefully you got A. Okay, the next question, it says here, according to economist Lionel Robbins, economics is the study of how we use scarce resources that have alternative uses. Supply and demand is a critical concept in economics. In general, the following 4 points pertain to supply and demand. 1. People tend to buy more at lower prices and less at higher prices. 2. Sellers/producers tend to supply more at higher prices and less at lower prices. 3. If fewer customers buy an item, the supply will remain high. 4. If more customers buy an item, the supply will go down. Then it says, suppose Josh opens a paint store and charges $50 for a gallon of blue paint. Over time, Josh notices that very few customers are buying blue paint. Which of the following is most likely true? Please base your answer on the information provided here above. A, B, C, and D, I'll leave those on the screen here for you, so pause the video. Take your time, reread this as much as you need to, and once you have your answer, unpause the video and we'll go ahead with the answer. Okay, so the answer here is B. Now, let's talk about this. If you chose A, note that if the demand for blue paint was high, a lot of people would be buying it, but it says very few are, so that's why we would rule A out. So what about C? Well, it says that people tend to buy more at lower prices, so if people aren't buying it at 50, if anything, the price is too high, right? So C would be wrong. Now, what about D? Well, it's the same with D. Remember, people tend to buy more at lower prices, so raising it won't help according to our general rules of thumb. Okay, so the next question here, now it says, suppose Josh decided to lower the price to $40 for a gallon of blue paint. Josh notices that significantly more customers are buying the paint now. Which of the following is most likely true? Please base your answer on the information provided above. Now it's the same exact 4 points, these general rules of thumb. The only thing that's changing is this scenario with Josh. So pause the video and again, take all the time you need to answer this. I want you to reread this, take as long as you need to, and we'll go over it. So the answer here is A, the demand for paint is high. Now, if the demand was low, few people would be buying, and since it says more customers are buying, that's why we would take B out. And for C, it says, remember, people tend to buy, I want you to note that people tend to buy more at lower prices. So as a general rule of thumb, and that's a general rule of thumb, and they buy less at higher, so if the price was too high, we wouldn't expect to see an increase in customers. Now what about D? Well, look at rule number 2. It tells us that sellers tend to supply more at higher prices. So what did Josh do with the price? Well, he took it from 50 down to 40. So since he lowered the price from the last question, he should have a lower supply, and we're left with A. So note that if more people are buying, it means the demand is high, which is exactly what we'd expect based off of these 4 rules if he lowers the price. Okay, the next question, I believe we're up to number 8. Let me read what this says in case this is hard to see, because it is kind of hard to fit all the graphs on the screen. So it says at the top, Jade's blue paint can purchases per month. Now, on the vertical axis here, we see numbers going from $0 up through $50 at the top. And it says here, the price per gallon of blue paint. So these prices, again, these are representing the price per gallon of blue paint. Now on our horizontal axis, it's going from 0 through 6, and it says the number of paint cans purchased per month. Now it says which conclusion is supported by the data on the graph. As the price of paint rises, Jade buys more. B, Jade buys the most cans when the price is at least 50. C, as the price of paint rises, Jade buys fewer cans. D, when the price decreased below 40, Jade stopped buying paint cans altogether. So pause the video, think about this, take all the time you need, and looks like there's a typo. Let me clear that out. So pause the video, try this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, the correct answer here is C. So let's first take a look at the graph, and if you do that, you'll see the line is going down as the price per gallon goes down. So hopefully you see that she buys more cans, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, these numbers are increasing, the cans per month that is, as the price goes down. So we take A out. So what about B? Well, when the price is $50 right here, how many cans does she buy? Well, looks like this corresponds to 0. So she buys 0 at 50 bucks. So B is out. Now, what about D? Why is D wrong? Well, when the price dipped below $40, she doesn't stop buying cans, right? She only stopped buying when it got up to 50. At 40 and below, she's buying even more. So that would leave us with C, and that is the right answer. If you missed my first practice test I did on social studies, I'll put a link to that in the description down below. You might like that one as well. And now if you'd like, I have a video on all-time best tips that I've came up with to help you beat GED social studies. And you can watch that video now too if you'd like. But either way, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this was helpful to you.